The wind rolled across the prairie like a slow, tired breath, flattening the tall grass in waves that shimmered beneath the late afternoon sun. Eli Carter stood at the edge of his ranch fence, one hand resting on the worn wood, the other shading his eyes. He had lived on this land for nearly 30 years, long enough to know the moods of the sky and the habits of the earth. It was quiet out here, the kind of quiet that pressed against a man's ears and filled his thoughts whether he wanted it to or not. That was when he heard the voice. "Mister?" It was small and thin, like a bird calling from the brush. Eli turned, expecting maybe a stray calf or a neighbor's boy, but instead he saw a little girl standing a few paces behind him. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8. Her dress was too big and patched in 3 places, her shoes worn so thin the toes nearly smiled open. She held a bundle to her chest, wrapped in a faded shawl. "Yes?" Eli said, surprised enough that the word came out rough. She looked up at him with eyes far older than they should have been. "My mama died today," she said plainly. "Can I spend a day with you, rancher?" The words landed heavy, like a stone dropped into still water. Eli felt them ripple through him, stirring memories he had long kept buried. He crouched slightly so he wasn't towering over her. "What's your name, miss?" "Clara," she answered. "Clara May. Where's your pa, Clara?" She shook her head. "Don't have one. It was just mama and me." Eli glanced down the dirt road that cut past his ranch. No wagon, no coffin, no preacher. Just dust and sky. He straightened slowly. "Where's your home?" She lifted her chin toward the east. "Was a shack near the creek. The landowner says we gotta leave now." Eli swallowed. He'd heard stories like this before, too many of them. Women and children tossed aside the moment a man died or couldn't work. He rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the sun-baked skin there. "You hungry?" Clara nodded once. "A little." That decided it. "Come on then," he said, opening the gate. "You can spend the day." She smiled, just barely, like she didn't quite trust happiness yet. Eli's ranch house wasn't much to look at, 2 rooms, a sagging porch, and a roof that needed fixing come winter, but Clara's eyes widened as if she'd stepped into a palace. He set her on a stool at the rough kitchen table and poured her a tin cup of milk, then cut thick slices of bread and spread them with the last of his honey. She ate quietly, carefully, like each bite mattered. Afterward, he put her to work in the garden, showing her how to pull weeds without disturbing the roots. She listened closely, mimicking his movements with serious concentration. Every now and then she'd ask a question about the land, or the cattle, or why the sky looked different out here than it did near the creek. "It's bigger here," she decided. Eli chuckled. "Feels that way sometimes." As the sun climbed higher, they walked the pasture. Clara laughed when a calf nosed her hand, and Eli felt something loosen in his chest at the sound. He hadn't heard laughter on this land in a long time. Years ago, there had been a woman here. Her name was Ruth. She'd loved the open sky, loved the smell of rain on dust. She'd also loved a man named Eli Carter, until sickness took her one winter and left him alone with a house full of echoes. Since then, he'd learned to live with quiet. Or so he thought. By noon, Clara was tired. Eli set her on the porch with a blanket and told her she could rest. She leaned against the post, eyelids fluttering. "Rancher," she murmured. "Yes, Clara. My mama used to say places remember people. Does your place remember her?" The question caught him off guard. He looked out across the land, remembering Ruth's laughter, her hands busy with work, her voice calling him in from the fields. "Yeah," he said softly. "I think it does." Clara nodded, satisfied, and drifted to sleep. When she woke, the shadows were longer. Eli had stew simmering on the stove, the smell rich and comforting. She ate with more confidence this time, cheeks warming with color. After supper, they sat on the porch and watched the sun sink low, painting the sky in fire and gold. "That's my favorite time," Clara said. "Mama liked it too." Eli felt the ache again. "You miss her?" She nodded. "But she told me not to be afraid. She said there are kind people in the world if you look." He stared at the horizon. She was right. As dusk settled, Clara grew quiet. She hugged her bundle closer. "I gotta go now," she said, though her voice trembled. "Where you gonna go?" Eli asked gently. She shrugged. "Somewhere." He stood, heart pounding harder than it had in years. The thought of her walking back toward that creek, toward a shack already claimed by someone else, twisted something deep inside him. "You can stay the night," he heard himself say. "It's late." Her eyes lifted, hope and fear warring there. "Just the night?" Eli hesitated. He'd lived alone a long time. He wasn't sure he knew how to be anything else. But as he looked at her, this small, brave girl carrying more sorrow than most grown men, he knew the truth before the words came. "You can stay forever," he said quietly. Clara's breath caught. "Really? Really?" She didn't cry. She simply stepped forward and wrapped her arms around his waist, holding on like she might fall otherwise. Eli rested a hand on her back, awkward at first, then sure. The days that followed weren't easy. Word traveled fast in small territories, and not everyone approved of a lone rancher taking in a child. The landowner by the creek came by, grumbling about property and responsibility, but Eli stood his ground. He filed the papers in town, spoke to the preacher, did everything proper. Clara learned the rhythms of ranch life. She fed the chickens, helped mend fences, and followed Eli everywhere with endless questions. At night, she told him stories her mama used to tell, her voice soft in the lamplight. Sometimes she cried, missing her mother so fiercely it stole her breath. Eli would sit with her, not saying much, just being there. He learned that presence mattered more than words. Seasons turned. Clara grew taller, stronger. The ranch felt different, alive in a way it hadn't for years. Eli found himself whistling while he worked, fixing things he'd long ignored. The land seemed to respond, grass greener, cattle healthier. One evening, as they watched the sun set, Clara leaned against him. "Mama was right," she said. "About what?" Eli asked. "About places remembering people. This place remembers you now. And me." Eli smiled, eyes stinging. "Yeah," he said. "It does." Under the vast western sky, with the past behind them and a future wide open, a rancher and a little girl became a family, not by blood, but by choice, kindness, and the quiet promise that no one would be left alone again.